My name is Derek Konishak.
My name's Gabriel Miller.
I'm Brandon Meeks.
I am Bill Bug.
I am Jacob Ebel here with the ForeverDMS. My introduction to D&D vastly predates my actual playing of it as a tabletop game. My first introduction to the system was at probably about the age of 6 or 7, somewhere in through there, playing Pool of Radiance on the NES.
Actually, it was a Star Wars role-playing game. I remember it was like 8th grade, and my friend Kevin was walking around with the rule book, which was yay thick. And he was like, yeah, I really like Star Wars and I want to play this role-playing game. And I was like, well, I like Star Wars, what is it? And so he gave me the rule book and was like, figure this out.
The year was 1997. I was in high school and I got roped into a couple other nerds, and they're like, hey, do you want to give this a try? I was like, yeah, sure, why not? It was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, AD&D. And it is literally my longest relationship.
I was walking in the hall of the Humanities building, and on the corkboard with all of the other flyers and such, there was one for, it said D&D group looking for players. And it had all of the phone numbers on the little tags that you could pull off. So I took one, made the call.
It was really freshman year of high school study hall. I ran into some really, really cool guys, and they introduced me to D&D. Rolled up my first character without reading a single rule. It was basic human fighter.
I had 8 players the first time I was DMing. It was a mess, but it was fun. It was my first introduction to 5th edition, as well as everybody else's that was playing. And I think the campaign only lasted about 6 months of us playing whenever we got people together as much as we could. But that was the first foray into actually running it versus just playing.
The first game I ended up running was in 8th grade, and it was for a couple of my friends, and it was really bad, but all of us had a blast with it, and that was my first experience with role-playing games in general, and eventually that led to Dungeons and Dragons.
My first experience running Dungeons and Dragons was 3.5 homebrew campaign that I had set up to be sort of an analog for pre-Roman Britain, sort of Arthurian times. So there were a handful of different cultures, and the player characters were trying to go around and prevent war. It was fun, it was intense, had to learn a lot, and like many D&D campaigns, we didn't finish it out.
There was a city called Requiem, and it was in a destroyed and barren landscape. The entire world had been annihilated by the wrath of the gods, but this singular city survived, protected by the powers of these ancient dragons coming together and giving of their life force to preserve the people inside. So it was this whole city-born campaign where everything had to be created magically. There were no crops, there was no fields, there thousands of people living in a tiny little, in the genie itty-bitty living space.
Nothing special. I just mapped out and drew something on a piece of paper. I was like, hey, that's a neat little cave. And that's pretty much went from there. The following year, after those guys graduated, we ended up starting a D&D club at school, and luckily one of the math teachers played as well, so he was able. Mr. Burns, I'll never forget him. He helped us out.
Role-playing games have been an evolving journey for me. They began as an escape. I was a little heavier set and a very nerdy guy, especially being involved in sports, but still being a nerd, and then getting into the army, but wanting to read fantasy novels. It was kind of an escape. And as years went on through life, it became a way that I can share a collaborative experience with my friends.
As a player, I love putting myself into my character's mindset and figuring out, okay, what would I do in this situation? I tend to build charisma-based characters a lot, and so I love when my party puts us into a crappy situation where I have to try to think outside of the box to talk my way out of it. I love solving those logic puzzles, I guess, as a player.
To quote one of the cheesiest lines that come from Gary Gygax and Big Bang Theory is D&D runs on the most powerful processor in the world, the human mind. And I think with, as much as I do love video games, and I love that video games have opened up a lot of different things, I believe it's the number one engine to fuel creativity.
It's kind of the aspect of it where there are no hard set rules, you know? It's learning to listen to who you're playing with and build with them, not just have such a one-track mind of like, this is what I'm doing, this is how my character works, this is how it goes. It's getting a feel for it with everybody else involved, and you know, building that story together and growing those characters together.
It helps me work out the world, problematic issues, like through play. What if I encountered this? How would I do this? And I just love the fact that through role-playing, you actually can grow as a person. You can learn how to relate, and you're all doing this simultaneously with people you actually know and care about. So it's just a wonderful experience to create together, explore the world together in what should be a very safe environment.